Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Today we are talking about scorekeeping in relationships, codependency, resentment, and how you can start having your relationships be in a space that creates collaboration and creates balance without having to force it. I think the hard thing about therapy and self-work is we often come into it expecting a result. Like it's kind of like A plus B equals C, right? Like I go to therapy and I process things and I'm more confident, I'm more sure of myself, I'm happier, da da da. And what I found in my own life is self-work is a lot more like, did you ever play that game of Kerplunk as a kid? And so Kerplunk, you have like the tube and there's all these sticks in it and there's marbles and you pull a stick and a stick and a stick, and then eventually all the marbles come down. So it's kind of like pulling a stick at a time. And I actually think that's how our growth, our evolution work. There's not like one thing that changes us. We just keep pulling sticks, and all of a sudden, kerplunk, something clicks. And I had this kerplunk moment, and I always love kerplunk moments, and they're much more of like a gift than something within our control. Because for a long time, what you'll find, and as you do this work, you'll kind of get it here. And then those kerplunk moments, you get it here. So I went to the allergist the other day. I have to get allergy shots. My daughter has to get allergy shots. Her allergy shots hurt her arm, so we can't do it in the morning because then she doesn't want to go to school. So we have to go to do allergy shots in the afternoon. The last appointment's at 4:30. I know they close at 5. We need a half hour. So I know I should be there by 4:30. And so I'm rushing around trying to get her all the way across town, a half hour away to get this allergy shot. We walk in the door and sit down. And the head nurse comes out and she's like, sorry, last shot was at 4:30. We're not going to see you today. Oh, and I got in the door at 4:35. So I was 5 minutes late. And she's like, we're not going to see you today. Another video coming on the wrong way to set boundaries. But she's like, set that boundary. We're not going to see you. And normally I would have had a lot to say to my husband about it and not said anything to her about it. But in that moment, I had a kerplunk moment. Something came over me. And I was like, are you serious? She's like, yep. I was like, okay. How do we go about switching allergists? Because I'm like, y'all are far away. I made it here. If this was going to be a strict rule, you should have let me know so I didn't drive all the way. I would have just stayed at home. At this point, I've driven a half hour. I have to drive a half hour home. I have house guests coming. I mean, she doesn't know all this, but it's also like it was a big inconvenience to get to that allergy appointment, and I did it. And so I just, in that moment, was like, how do we switch allergists? Like, these hours aren't working for me. And she was kind of like, what? And I was like, yeah, we're switching allergists. And again, normally I'm very people pleasy. So I would have been like, I'm sorry. But nope, I wasn't sorry. This is not working. And as I was driving home, I was just like, how? Like, A, why was I doing that? They don't have hours that work for me. It's way further. As I'm driving, I'm calling the allergist closer to me. And I'm like, what are your hours? Hours are better, 15 minutes away from me. I just cut my commute time in half. I can do it where I'm not rushing. And I'm like, how much of my life is spent schlepping around for other people? How much am I sacrificing my peace, my happiness, my time to make it work for someone else? And just like the allergists, honestly, so much of the time, they're not even registering it as a favor, as helpful. They're still going to set the same firm, harsh boundary when they want. And it just felt like in that moment, like the codependency just started leaving my body. And I was like, I'm no longer sacrificing myself for everyone else. And I just realized, I mean, it was like this sweeping energy through my life of seeing these areas in my marriage, how I've taken on things so that my husband feels supported, and I've thrown myself out of balance to make sure he's in balance. With my kids, how I take on things for them so that they're in balance and that they're good, which again, we're parents, we want to do that, but then I do it at the expense of me. And there's just so many areas in my life where I realize like this pattern of going out of my way and making myself a crazy person to make sure someone else is okay or happy or doesn't look at me badly has honestly taken over a lot of areas, a lot of my main way of being. And so that was just such this freeing moment. And I was talking to a client and I was like telling that story. And so I share it here too. It was just such this aha moment of like, where am I sacrificing myself for someone else? And I also love that story because so often when we're sacrificing ourselves from someone else, they don't know. They don't care. They don't appreciate it. It's like how I look at it is in my head, I'm like investing money into this relationship, right? Like in my relationship with my family, with my sister, I invest this money, I invest this money, I invest this money, thinking it's going to be something. And it turns out it was just monopoly money. It was never real. It doesn't have any actual currency. When I sacrifice myself for you without an agreement for me to sacrifice myself for you, that's not real money. That's a fantasy currency that I made up in my head. And what I mean by that is if two people, like money works because both people agree the value of $1. Two people agree the value of $5. Like a society is agreeing that we're going to like make this mean something. And what I found is when I'm taking it upon myself to sacrifice myself for someone else without an agreement, they're not agreeing that that means what I think it means. And so oftentimes they're agreeing that they'll do the thing in the moment, but it's not collecting and it's not an investment for the future. And here I'm trying to invest in the future. And they're not seeing it as an investment in the future. They're just taking it in the moment. The key to this is it's like, I'm so excited. I'm going on a cruise in a year, and I think it's going to be the best thing ever, and it'll probably be terrible. But right now, I'm in this fantasy of the best thing ever. And so I'm on these like Facebook pages, and someone's like, "Do you have to pay for this on a cruise?" And they're like, "Everything's free till you get the bill." Well, a lot of us are living our relationships like that. We're giving to others, we're giving to our kids, we're giving to our spouse, we're giving to our siblings, and they're taking because, ooh, I'll take the complimentary upgrade, I'll take the dinner, I'll take all this. And then we hand them the bill and they don't want to pay the bill because they didn't agree to the charge. So when I came to my husband and I'm like, I have been pushing myself to make this work for you, he looks at me like I'm crazy and he's like, quote, I thought we were doing a good job supporting each other. And I'm like, no. but I see why he sees that because I didn't say, hey, me doing this is taking a big toll. Are we agreeing to me giving a lot of myself? Are we agreeing that I should be spending this emotional energy on this? Should I be sacrificing this? If we agree, there's appreciation on his end. There's acknowledgement. There's probably some retribution. Like, hey, I owe you because you did this and I owe you in a way. Like, right? Like we've agreed. But me just secretly taking on all the tasks and all the things and then being like, blah. I've been doing all this stuff and you haven't. He's like, I didn't tell you to do it. Some of the tasks that we're doing for other people, they don't need done. Or it would be as easy for them to do. Or maybe it should be a discussion of a trade. So it's like, hey, let's say someone needs their dry cleaning picked up. It's on my way, I'll pick up your dry cleaning, but can you do this thing for me? Like we really got to keep accounting more in the moment. Because I think in a lot of relationships, my mom always talks about Stephen Covey and this bank account. And to me, it doesn't work because no one's keeping a ledger that long. Like, we're humans. I'm human. We can have a great relationship and you insult me and I'm done. I don't care how much money's in the bank. Account closed. Like, what I've started to do as an overextending people pleaser, I have decided to keep my accounting, it has to be tight. It has to be pretty much one for one. For example, my son has a friend, and my son's friend, we would bring her home, and then we would take her to Chuck E. Cheese with us. We'd take her to the movies. We'd have her over. Like, we do a lot of stuff. But then I look back over a year, and they've never done anything with they've never taken our son. And so it's this awareness of like, wait a minute, what am I doing? And does everything have to be tit for tat? No. But there's a quote, and I wish I had the author. There's a quote I love, and relationships that have a sustained level of inequality are doomed. Like you can't recover. And so these loving things we're doing for our spouses, for our kids, for our neighbors, we are actually creating an environment that will kill the relationship because you can't, at a certain point, you can't recover. And so now what I've learned from that is my son now, he has a friend. And I made a rule, and y'all, it is so hard. And I've already almost broken it like 5 times. It's like, we'll have this kid over for a play date, and then they can have him over for a play date. And then we'll have their son over for a play date, and then they'll have our son over. Right? I let the ball be in her court for a while, see what she does with it, because guess what? I don't need the play date. I have 3 kids. I'm busy. Like, I'm not doing it for me. And again, there's some things that I benefit from that I'm going to just keep that rolling. That's the benefit is in the moment, right? There's certain things we do that like the reward is just having a kid to play with my kid or whatever. That's not the situation. Let me just say that. Love this kid, but it's a lot more work. So how many situations am I doing it because this is what a good person does? This is what I shouldn't keep score, like all this stuff. And all that means is I'm never getting what I want. And again, when I pull the ledger up, hey, we've, been hanging out. Your daughter's come over 10 times and you've never had our son over. They didn't agree with it. She didn't agree with that. So now I look like a crazy person setting a boundary that we never talked about. So again, that's where I talk about monopoly money. It's fake. It's in my head. No one agreed to it. You sound like a crazy person being like, you owe me 500 fake dollars. Like, I'm like, what are you talking about? You're psycho. And that's another thing about this pattern is when we're not pointing it out and having these discussions, a lot of this goes unnoticed by the people that we're doing this for. And so they're not recognizing that we're doing them a favor, or they're not recognizing that we're putting ourselves out for them. They don't see it. And then we're training people how to treat us. Gosh, Lynn just loves play dates. This girl loves them. She loves Chuck E. Cheese. I'm like, no. Leanne does not love Chuck E. Cheese, okay? I think there's a myth that we don't need things from our partner and that we should be self-contained. And that's not true. We need each other. We need to co-regulate each other. We need to support each other. We need to back each other up. But the difference is if I'm doing sneaky things, building up a secret ledger, and then getting mad at you for not paying me back, we have a problem. I think my biggest thing that I have recently done is not been honest about my needs. And then I create this tension because, again, I'm living this life where I'm doing more than I can do. And to me, it's a lot more partnership, grown up, if each partner comes to the table and is like, this is what I need. How can we figure this out together? Not how can you do it or how can I absorb it? It's what's the solution? For example, something that worked really well for me was my husband for a long time took all the kids to school, and it gave me this really special time at home to reset the house. And I actually don't want anyone else to reset the house. I like it. It was meditative. It was relaxing. It felt like a loving act for the family. Again, that's something that I was able to do with no desire for payback because in the moment, it felt very balanced. I just felt at peace and happy to give that. And this might change, but I clean my kids' rooms every day in those mornings because I love it. To me, it's like an I love you. Like, come into a clean room. Like I said, this might not happen forever, but right now, it's like just a way that I kind of like show some love to the family. I'm not very domestic, so it's a very big deal for me. I'm not making meals for anyone, so I have to do it somehow. Here's some Thai takeout, but your room's clean. So there's certain things. But what was happening is I know my husband doesn't like to drive and his job changed, so now we're splitting mornings and it's killing me and the resentment's building. And so that's one of those things I need to have a conversation where like, drop-offs isn't working for me. How do we solve that problem as a couple? It's not that you have to go back to drop-offs, but it is like, the ideal situation, my husband's listening, would be he takes drop-offs back over. That would be the most amazing for me. But again, I don't want to drain him. But maybe he's like 3 days a week, I will do drop-offs and you can have your mornings. And then 2 days you do them. Like, I'm sure there's a solution here, but I have to be honest with my needs. honest with the cost, and then looking for a solution with my partner versus overworking, getting resentment, being mad they haven't read my mind, and then being bitter, and then come at them like, you don't care about me, you never help. Blah. It's like, again, he thought we were helping each other, being supportive. But how is he supposed to know how important those mornings when I didn't even know how important those mornings were until they were taken away? And that's another thing I want to talk about when it comes to how do we split tasks within a couple, within a relationship, because there is a belief that we shouldn't keep score, that we shouldn't be looking at it that way. But that really only benefits the person who's doing the least. I don't want to keep score if I'm losing. So what I want and what I encourage you to think about in your relationships is I do think every couple, just like we need a budget, if you don't have a budget, your money just kind of disappears. My last year of my life is a testament to that. Money just went missing. And so if we're not keeping a budget and we're not keeping track of our money, it has a way of just floating away. And if we're not keeping track of the household, the task, it just has a way of floating away, and one person usually picks up the slack and one person doesn't. And I'm not saying it's either person. I think it's actually really healthy for both people to have an idea of what the other person's doing, because then if actually it is equal, there's less resentment, and it's like the transparency helps. And if it's not equal, both parties can see that and you guys can work to equalize it. And so I really recommend sitting down, writing out the task. And you guys do this as a couple, but I have done this in my house on my own. I have written out the spreadsheet. And again, it's not in a like vindictive, angry way, but truly in an equalizing way. And the spreadsheet started during COVID. My husband and I were splitting childcare, and I would literally write out a spreadsheet of the hours we were each watching the kids, the hours we were working, and I made sure it was equal, and the hours we were there together, and I made sure it was equal so that neither of us felt taken advantage of. And I knew that when I was with the kids, that was truly my shift, and when he was with the kids, it was truly his shift, and we didn't feel like we were robbing the other person or really being robbed. And so what I recommend, again, write out the spreadsheet. What are the tasks y'all are doing? And what's that list looking like? And is there any task on the list that's exceptionally painful to either person? And maybe could we switch those tasks? Could we outsource those tasks? Like the spreadsheet's also helpful to figure out, am I spending the time doing things I like that I hate? What do I like? What do I hate? And again, in our house, the division of labor came down to who hates it the least. I hate dishes the most. So my husband does dishes. He hates it the least. I actually don't mind laundry. He hates laundry. So we have this like even exchange of, because it's kind of a daily task with a bigger family. So it's like, I'm the laundry person, he's the dishes person. And so also when you're looking at your list, it doesn't have to be even Steven, it just has to feel even. Okay, you're doing something you really hate, and I'm doing a few things that I don't mind. We're good. But you want to be careful because sometimes those lists can get really unequal without being noticed. And I want y'all to be really intentional about how you're dividing tasks in the house and at least see where those tasks are going. And this isn't like the most exciting part of partnership. This isn't the most fun thing to do on a date night, but this is how we tend to our relationship. And we really have to see our relationship as almost a separate entity. I think we will be a lot more successful in our marriages if we view them as businesses. The relationship is a business we are running. There are tasks involved in running the business. And of course, if one person is doing more tasks for the business and getting paid the same amount of money, there's going to be resentment. And so if we look at it, this is the business that we're running together and there are tasks associated with the business we're running together. Of course, we have to have a meeting to see how we're dividing those tasks and to make sure everyone's okay with their task. And again, it's like a business. Sometimes you have to hire other employees to make sure that it's feeling okay for everyone. And we can sometimes get creative with that in terms of, what are, again, the high stress items, low stress items, and where do we need to outsource? And are we outsourcing in the best way?